I was 31 at the time and driving solo from Denver to Boise for work. I'm not a trucker or anything, just a field tech who racks up miles. If you've ever done a straight shot through that stretch after midnight, you know the feeling. Miles of nothing, a radio station fading in and out, that weird patch of alertness that feels almost like a dream. I had 2 energy drinks left and a bag of pretzels I'd been eating one at a time, like they were keeping me alive. Around 1:40 a.m., I pulled into a state rest area. The highway had felt like the surface of the moon for the last hour, so the glow of sodium vapor lamps looked cozy. A handful of semis idled on the far end, their diesel engines making that heavy, constant breathing sound. A vending machine hummed inside the building. The sidewalks shined a little like they'd been hosed, and there was that sharp smell of bleach you get in hard-used bathrooms at night. Right away, I noticed orange cones in front of the main doors with a laminated sign zip-tied to a folding stand. Facility closed for maintenance. Please use temporary restrooms behind building. The sign had the state seal and a helpline number. It looked official enough to pass the don't think about it test. I cut the engine, grabbed my wallet, and stepped out into air so quiet I could hear the highway like a faraway ocean. I was debating if I even wanted to deal with porta potties in the dark, when a man in a reflective vest walked across the path from the side lawn, pushing a mop bucket. He nodded at me and I nodded back. Closed? I asked. Yeah, we're flushing the lines. Hour tops, he said. His voice had that night shift calm that makes you feel like you're interrupting someone else's set routine. He pointed a thumb toward the back. Blue doors. Watch your step, ground slick. Thanks, I said, and started around the building. There were 4 portable units lined along the back fence. 2 blue, 2 green, a floodlight on a stand casting long shadows. A moth the size of a spoon clinked against the light head over and over. A pickup truck sat in the service lane with its hazard lights on. Tailgate down, 5-gallon buckets and contractor trash bags tossed inside. It all felt like a place actively in use, not staged. I stepped into a blue unit and shut the door. The air was the usual mix of chemical and damp plastic. I did what I needed to do quickly and stepped back out. That's when the night shifted, something tiny, a change in the background noise that made my skin notice itself. The floodlight was still buzzing, the semis still chuffing, but there was a voice, not words, the cadence of a voice. I held still and listened. It was coming from the other side of the back fence beyond the floodlight. Hello. I called because of course I did. It stopped. Then faint but clear I heard a cough, followed by that small laugh you make when you're embarrassed. Then quiet again. I set my hand on the top of the chain link and pulled myself up enough to see beyond. The fence separated the rest area's mowed triangle from a narrow strip of scrub and a drainage culvert. The floodlight barely reached it. I aimed my phone flashlight across and caught glints, 2 eye-shine pinpricks like a raccoon or a cat. Then those pinpricks moved sideways and were gone, and something heavier walked in the scrub, steps too carefully placed to be an animal just doing animal things. Maintenance, I called a little less boldly. You folks working back there? No answer. I climbed down. I had the feeling in my chest I get when I'm swimming in a lake and brush something with my foot. Not panic, just that instant jolt that says, you don't belong there. Need a hand, a voice said behind me. I startled so hard I knocked my elbow on the fence. It was the reflective vest man with the mop bucket. Thought I heard someone on the other side, I said. He glanced at the fence, then at me and shrugged. Lots of someones, he said. Coyotes, deer, people who don't want to be bothered. He smiled, a small chuff through his nose. We mind our side of the fence. The itch between my shoulders didn't leave. It got worse when I noticed his vest was bright and clean, not a speck on it, and the mop water in his bucket was so clear the ringer's metal reflection looked like chrome. Not impossible, just wrong for 1:45 a.m. Got it, I said. Thanks. I power walked the rest of the way to my car, fighting the urge to look behind me. The lot felt both too empty and too full of places a person could stand if they wanted to be out of line of sight. Angles of truck trailers, a little grove of scrubby trees by the pet area, the shadow between the vending machine alcove and the soda pallet stacked nearby. My car chirped when I hit unlock, and I climbed in and locked the doors before I even sat all the way down. I stared at the building. The cones in front of the doors were there. The sign looked official, but something in my head kept saying, "Let's go." Every instinct in me was suddenly 5 years old and didn't want to be lost in the basement. As I put the car in reverse, I heard a tiny chime from my phone and looked down at the screen. At the top, a banner. "Unknown item detected near you." It wasn't my AirPods. I hadn't brought them. It was that generic message you get when your phone thinks a tracker that isn't yours is moving with you. I tapped it. The loading wheel spun. Connecting! I put the car back in park and looked up. The reflective vest man wasn't in view anymore. The floodlight hummed. The highway hissed. My screen finally loaded a map with a dot that wasn't my phone. First seen, 1:29 a.m. Last seen, now. Estimating route nearby, my heart jumped into my throat. I turned the phone face down, like seeing the words made them more real, and slid out of the car. I'm not an action hero. I didn't have a plan, but somehow my hands knew what they were doing. I dropped to a knee and ran my fingers along the inside of my rear bumper where the plastic lip meets the metal. Nothing. I crouched lower and scanned with my phone flashlight under the car. On the crossmember near the exhaust, taped to a magnet puck with black electrical tape, was a quarter-sized white disc. I didn't think. I ripped it off and slammed it into my empty pretzel bag, like someone might reach for my hand if I held it too long. I twisted the bag and stuffed it deep in my door pocket. When I stood, breath loud in my ears, someone was watching from the edge of the lot, the silhouette of a person by the little grove of trees. Phone held up at eye height, like they were taking a picture or video. I couldn't see a face. The streetlight behind them blew their head into a glowing outline. "Hey!" I barked, and to my surprise, my voice came out like a person unafraid. They lowered their phones slowly and stepped back into the trees. I got in my car and reversed fast enough to hear pebbles pop under the tires. I passed the doors with the cones and caught a small detail I hadn't noticed before. The zip ties on the sign were bright red, not the standard white I'd seen in a dozen state buildings. That doesn't mean anything, I told myself, but it did mean something. It meant someone had cared enough to make it look right on a quick glance and hadn't cared enough to get the color right. I took the ramp back to the highway and kept the speed a little higher than I should have. When I hit the next town with a well-lit truck stop, I pulled in and parked under a camera dome and walked inside with the pretzel bag like it was a live thing. The overnight clerk didn't blink when I asked if there was a trash can with a metal lid. She pointed to the one by the coffee bar. I slid the bag under empty polystyrene cups and felt my pulse drop a notch. Back in the car, my phone buzzed. "Item no longer near you." The banner tone made me want to hurl the phone into the dark. I called the state police non-emergency and filed a report that felt ridiculous and also like the only thing I could do. The trooper took my info and said they'd notify station operations for the area. I finished the drive with my shoulders up near my ears. 2 days later, my manager emailed me a courier envelope that had come to the office addressed to Field Tech, Vehicle 7. Inside was a printed photo on cheap laser paper. It was a shot of my car from the rest area, taken from behind and to the right. Exactly the angle you'd be at if you stepped out of the little grove by the pet area. My license plate was sharp and clean. My bumper lip was in focus. On the lower edge of the photo, cropped from view but visible in the reflection of my taillight, was a sliver of bright red plastic. When I called the number on the rest area sign, the helpline that had made me feel like things were normal, an earnest man told me maintenance had not been scheduled that night. "If you ever see cones, don't trust cones," he said, and then added, "Well, trust some cones. But you know, I do now. I still stop at rest areas. I still need places to pee like everyone else, but I pull into the spots under the best light. I pump the brakes twice before I park so someone bored enough to watch knows I'm awake. And I always run my fingers under the bumper before I get back on the road, even if I feel dumb. even if I'm the only idiot kneeling on cold pavement at 2 a.m. with my heart suddenly sprinting because a moth hit the light and I thought it was a hand. This happened last fall on a trip I took with my older brother. We were driving back from visiting our parents and decided to stop at a rest area around 12:30 a.m. It was one of those newer ones with separate parking for cars and trucks, a pet area, and a big, bright building that looks like it should smell like coffee even at midnight. We pulled in under a light 3 spots from the entrance. My brother said he'd take the dog to the pet area while I ran inside to use the bathroom. There were a few people around, an older couple, a guy in a ball cap filling a soda, a trucker buying a coffee. The fluorescent lights had that hospital feel, but safe. I went into the women's room. It was clean and smelled like industrial citrus. 3 stools, 1 occupied. The occupied one had a pair of sneakers visible. Black flat soles, a little white stripe on the sides. I nodded to the empty air like people do in bathrooms and went into the far stall. About halfway through washing my hands, a sound behind me made me flinch. It was a cough. Then the small, wet clearing sound people make when they've been quiet too long. It came from the occupied stall. I realized then that I hadn't heard a flush or any movement the entire time I'd been in there. "You okay?" I said, because that's who I am even when I don't want to be. "Need anything?" "Nothing." Then after a too long pause, "Occupied," a woman's voice said. Flat. It sounded like someone trying to sound like someone else. "I know," I said. "Just checking." I dried my hands on a paper towel to avoid the drone of the blower and went back out to the lobby. My brother was nowhere in sight. I texted him. "Where are you?" He replied a second later, "Dog did not approve of the pet area. Resetting." I smiled at the floor like a person who lives with a creature that will only pee diagonally on Tuesdays. I bought a bottle of water, because that's what anxiety does, and waited by the front windows so I could see both the lobby and the parking lot at once. Outside, a man in a hoodie stood next to a white sedan 2 aisles over. He wasn't doing anything, just standing by the passenger door with his hand on the handle like it was his car, and he was waiting for someone to finish a phone call. I didn't think anything of it until I noticed he wasn't facing the car. He was facing my brother and our dog, who was circling a patch of grass under a tree. My brother threw me a thumbs up without looking and started back. I ducked back into the bathroom to try my luck one more time. Road trips are like that. And immediately paused just inside the door. The occupied stall was still occupied, sneakers in the same place, no movement. The same breath sound, that thin, dry laugh a person does alone to make their chest feel less tight. The hair on my arms lifted. "You okay?" I asked again, and I hated my voice. It sounded like the kind of voice a person uses when they want a ghost to be polite. "Occupied," the voice said again. Same tone, same rhythm. A little echoey, like it didn't belong in the stall but in a speaker. I stepped close enough to see the gap where the door meets the frame and realized the latch wasn't angled right. It was too perfectly horizontal. A silent alarm bell went off in my head, the kind that doesn't ring. It just makes your eyes know something before your mouth does. I crouched and looked under just long enough to see that the sneakers were on top of a folded jacket, not feet at all. The toes pointed wrong. The laces were untied and tucked under like a kid puts them away when told to clean. I stood so fast, I hit my shoulder on the paper towel dispenser. "I need to report something," I said to the woman at the info counter. She looked up with that forced courtesy people wear between midnight and 2. I told her as quickly as I could, "There's someone pretending to be in a stall. The latch is faked. It sounds like a recording." She blinked. Then her eyebrows moved towards each other, like she was trying to keep them from touching. The night manager was a heavy-set guy with tired eyes. He followed me into the bathroom with a ring of keys that looked like a medieval prop. He knocked on the stall, then knocked harder, then used a long metal key to pop the outside release. The door swung in. The sneakers fell over, and a small Bluetooth speaker the size of a soap bar clattered onto the tile. It was still connected to something. Tiny, tinny cough noises whispered out until the manager picked it up and turned it off. The jacket under the sneakers was folded, a cheap windbreaker, with the tag still stuck to the collar. Prank, the manager said, but his mouth didn't believe it. He looked up at the ceiling corners like he wanted to pick the whole room up and shake it. I texted my brother, "Inside now." He walked in with the dog, his face going from "what now?" to "okay" when he saw the look on mine. We headed toward the doors without needing to say anything else. The man by the white sedan was gone. We walked quickly to our car. My brother put the dog in the back seat and I slid into the passenger side. As soon as he started the engine, something caught my eye through the side mirror. Movement low to the ground, the wrong speed for a person walking. A shadow pulling itself along the asphalt under the white sedan, 2 aisles over. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled so hard, I felt like I had a sunburn. "Go!" I said too loud. "Right now," he pulled out. I kept my eyes on the white car's undercarriage. The shadow stopped moving when we moved. It stayed perfectly still, like a creature that thinks it's invisible if it doesn't breathe. Then, just as we passed, a hand reached out from under the sedan and plucked a small white disc off the inside of its rear tire well. A magnet or a beacon, something, and the hand slipped back underneath with the smoothness of a seal going under. We drove to the far end of the lot, with the headlights aimed into as much space as possible. My brother's voice went flat. "What did you see? Someone under that car?" "They took something off the wheel well," I said. My mouth felt like I'd eaten chalk. We reported it to the night manager, who called security, who called the state troopers. I sat on a hard bench by the vending machine with the dog's leash wrapped around my wrist, until a trooper with a face like he'd seen every version of human weirdness turned up. He listened, nodded, and then said, "We've had some reports along this corridor. People trying doors, people staging stalls, people planting trackers. It's not new. It goes in waves. Why the speaker?" I asked. "Buys time," he said simply. "Makes the room sound occupied while someone else tries your car." I don't know what happened to the person under the sedan. We didn't stick around. The trooper took our statement and walked us back to the car and followed us out with his lights onto the ramp. I didn't sleep once we got home. I showered with the dog because I needed something warm to stand in while my heart slowed down. A day later, while cleaning out the map pocket in my door, I found a folded slip of paper the size of a receipt. It was blank. It smelled like car grease. I'm not saying it was a calling card. I'm saying I checked under my bumper every day for a month and stopped using my side door for a while because it felt too easy. Now if I have to stop at a rest area after midnight, I do what looks paranoid. I jiggle my door handle before I walk away. So if anyone is close enough to learn my lock's voice, they will have to hear me be loud. I glance under the cars around mine. I knock on stall doors and listen for the wrong kind of answer. And when I hear a cough behind a door that never opens, I leave. I worked nights as a rest area attendant for 2 years. If you've never been in one after midnight, other than to step in and out, let me tell you, it's not quiet the way you think it is. It's a loud quiet. HVAC hum, vending machine whine, diesel rumble rising and falling. The building breathes in its own way. You get used to everything it says so you can hear what doesn't belong. The job is mostly bathrooms, mop water, and keeping the place from looking like it's been in a music festival. We're supposed to do a full walkthrough every hour and a grounds check every 2. The troopers come through on a loop. Most nights are boring in a way I miss now. Last October, the weird started small. Cones would appear where we didn't put them. Not in front of doors or anything ridiculous, just placed at the far end of the lot where the light dies a little, like they were saved there from a construction crew that forgot them. I'd move them to the maintenance shed. They'd find their way back to the edge of the light by morning. Could have been kids. Could have been me not remembering. The mind can be a plate spinner at 3 a.m. Then the flyers started. Lost toddler, if seen call. Bad photocopies with the eyes too dark and the teeth too light. Red marker emphasizing toddler. We took them down because posting outside flyers isn't allowed without state approval. Next shift, new ones would be up. The number changed each time. You learn the difference between panicked ink and deliberate ink. These were deliberate. Around then, we started hearing what sounded like a baby crying in the tree line. Not loud, not near. Just at the edge of where your head goes when you're only responsible for your side of the fence. The first time, my partner at the time, Monique, looked at me and I looked at her, and we both said out loud, no. We could have walked out there. There's a trooper box with a radio. There's a protocol, but we also have a binder of don'ts. If you think that's heartless, I agree. I also still have the job because I kept it. The night that fixed it in my head, I was alone. Monique had called out sick. It was 2:07 a.m. on the clock. I was filling the paper towel dispensers and humming just to give my brain a metronome. The back door alarm chimed a little ding to let me know the service hall door had been opened. I was still holding the towels when a man in a maintenance vest stepped into the hallway like he'd always been there. He was average in a way that made my eyes slide. Dark beard, baseball cap, clean work shoes. He nodded like he belonged and said, "A water fountain is leaking. Manager said to grab you." "We don't have a manager," I said. I didn't mean to be rude. It just fell out. "Our supervisor's office is 20 miles away. On nights, the word manager means someone is either new or lying." "Supervisor," he corrected without moving his mouth much. "You mind?" I put the towel box down and followed him to the far fountain by the vending machines. Water was on the tile, enough to make the reflection jitter under the fluorescent tubes. "See," he said. He knelt and felt under the lip for the shut-off valve, like he knew exactly where it was. He turned it, and the hum in the unit changed, and the stream drooped, and then a little squirt of water shot onto his knuckles. He wiped it on his vest and stood. It was a good show. It looked like fixing. "Thanks," I said, because I didn't want to be the guy who stands in a doorway and asks for forms. He nodded and walked toward the service hall again. He didn't go out the back door. He turned into the lobby and out the main doors without another word. The thing is, the path he took past the lobby security camera should have tripped the motion overlay on my monitor. It didn't. I only noticed because the time code was on screen the whole time with no yellow border. But when I rewound later, he was on tape, there but not flagged as motion. I know that sounds technical and petty. On nights, the petty becomes your weather vane. If motion doesn't flag, either the camera missed it or the person's clothing absorbed enough of the difference that the algorithm didn't care. At 3:11 a.m., a help came from the tree line behind the pet area. Not a screaming horror movie help. A man's voice, the way you'd say it in a grocery store when you're half laughing because your cart got stuck. Help? Like a question. Like a dare. I called the trooper box and got a voice I knew. "You want me to walk it?" I asked. "Negative," he said, calm like the day shift. "We're 2 minutes out." They pulled in 60 seconds later, lights down, and made a slow loop of the back lot with a spotlight, doing that gentle search that looks like you lost your keys and are not angry. Nothing jumped, nothing ran. They parked and we stood at the edge of the pet area and listened together for a long minute. The air smelled like wet concrete and a whiff of diesel and the herby funk of the field beyond the fence. Something clicked, like a cheap speaker being turned on. We didn't hear the voice again. At 4:02, when I took my break, I sat in the back office and watched the camera feeds on fast forward. I like watching the world move without me in it. It keeps me awake. I watched myself mop, watched a stray cat try the door, watched a man in a ball cap and vest walk with a mop bucket through the service hall and out the main lobby. I watched myself follow him 30 seconds later, normal. Then the office printer started printing. We don't print much at night. We get our forms in 3-ring binders. The printer made its slow warm-up clicks, then fed a sheet of paper. Then another, then a third. I thought Monique had set up some report to print, then remembered she wasn't there. I stood and walked over and picked up the top sheet. It was a still frame from the exterior camera by the pet area, time code 31104. The image was of the tree line. The light from the building cut off just shy of the scrub. The rest was black. In the black, if you tilted the paper and stared long enough, you felt like there could be a shape. That's what darkness does when you stare at it long enough. The second page was the fountain frame, me and the maintenance man in his vest, his hand under the lip. The third page was the service hall camera showing my back as I followed him, head tilted. Posture like a person who still trusts paper signs and zip ties. On the bottom of the third page, someone had written with a black pen in careful block letters. 2 words, "Stay inside." I looked at the printer's tray. No print job, no error. I looked at the office door, which was half open like I'd left it. I walked through the lobby and checked the doors, locked. Cones where they lived. The drinking fountain shut off, its little stream of drooping silver hair that caught the light like a trick. State talked to us the next day about flyers and safety. They said there had been copycat incidents off the interstate. Don't interact, they said for the 100th time. Observe and report. They sent a memo about de-escalation language. We rolled our eyes and signed it. The troopers did a few more loops with the spotlight that week. The flyers stopped. My last shift before I moved to mornings, I took the garbage out just before dawn. A thin blue light sat on the horizon, the time of day where you can see both stars and the side of your own breath. I wheeled the bag to the dumpster and flipped the lid and caught a smell I had not caught all week. Sweet, burned plastic. Melted electronics. I looked in and saw the charred shell of a Bluetooth speaker like the one we'd heard coughing from behind a bathroom door. It sat on top of a pile of paper towels like a dead beetle on bread. We have cameras on the dumpster. I rewound the feed for the 100th time. At 2:44, the frame went white for half a second, like a flashlight aimed right into the lens. When the frame returned to normal, the dumpster lid was down. We never saw the person who put it in. The motion didn't flag. I don't have a clean ending. The night doesn't give you those very often. Some people stop because things interrupt them. Some stop because light touches them. Some stop because another person says the word help in a tone that belongs to a movie and not to a man in the cold. The printer pages went into the incident file, unhelpful and too helpful at once. I moved to day shift. I still wake up at 2:58 some nights without an alarm and hold my breath for the sound of a door chime that isn't there. Now, when I'm traveling, I still use rest areas. I pay attention to cones. I look for the wrong color zip ties. I give every flyer a second look and then throw it away. I stand 6 feet from the tree line and let the hum of the building tell me what's normal. And if someone calls help with the question mark at the end, I keep the door open and wait for the loop of headlights to pull through the lot and let the air tell me it's done. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories.